Life doesn't wait, and neither do opportunities. Every moment challenges your focus, your resilience, and your ability to act with clarity. Success isn't about luck. It's about how your mind navigates pressure, uncertainty, and setbacks. What separates high achievers from the rest isn't raw talent. It's the way they train their minds to respond strategically, turning obstacles into advantages and stress into action. In this video, you'll discover 10 powerful, practical strategies to master your thoughts, control your reactions, and consistently win in every situation. By the end, your mindset won't just react. It will command results. Number 1. Reframe setbacks into strategic advantages. A setback feels like a door slamming in a quiet hallway, sudden, loud, and impossible to ignore. The body reacts first, a tightness behind the ribs, breath short, thoughts sprinting toward worst-case scenarios. That physical jolt is useful information, not a verdict. It signals an opportunity to practice a skill that matters far more than avoiding failure: the ability to convert interruption into advantage. Reframing a setback is not polishing a disappointment with optimism. It is a disciplined, practical method for turning raw experience into usable strategy. It trains the mind to treat obstacles as data, experiments, and training grounds rather than as proof that the world is against you. The first practical move is simple and immediate. Stop talking to the story. The mind will invent explanations, blame, defenses, and urgent plans within seconds. Those are stories, not facts. Naming the sensation and the facts calms the nervous system and clears the way for rational action. Pause for 30 seconds and breathe slowly, counting 4 in, 4 out 2 or 3 times. Describe aloud or in writing what actually happened in one sentence. The client declined the proposal, or the team missed the deadline. No meaning added, no doom declared. This tiny discipline divides reaction from response, and that gap is where advantage is built. Once the immediate reaction is contained, turn toward questions that produce leverage. Instead of asking, "Why did this ruin everything?" reframe the inquiry. "What does this reveal?" This shifts attention from blame to intelligence gathering. Every setback contains clues about weak assumptions, about hidden constraints, about skills that need strengthening, or about timing and communication failures. Make a brief list, 3 concise observations, grounded in evidence. For example, proposal lacked concrete ROI numbers. Decision timeline was shorter than expected. Key stakeholders' priorities were misunderstood. These points become the scaffolding for the next step: corrective experiment. Design one focused experiment. This is the fundamental principle of turning setbacks into strategic advantages. Convert emotion into iteration. Pick the smallest, most specific action that tests a useful hypothesis. If a pitch failed for lack of ROI clarity, the experiment could be: craft a 1-page ROI snapshot and test it on a trusted advisor in 2 days. If a team missed a milestone, the experiment could be adopting a daily 10-minute progress sync for 1 sprint. The goal is not to fix everything at once. It is to learn fast and cheaply so future decisions become safer and smarter. A practical structure that helps is the after-action review, used by teams and adaptable for personal use. Ask 4 questions and write 1-sentence answers. What was expected? What actually happened? Why did it happen? What will be done differently next time? Keep the language precise and unemotional. The discipline of an after-action review turns vague regret into a clear playbook. Over time, these short reviews become a compounding training log, small lessons stacked into significant capability. Adopt a stoic practice, negative visualization with active response. Not to dwell on loss, but to practice preparedness. Spend 5 minutes imagining small ways things could go wrong and list 3 pre-planned responses. When a setback happens, one of those prepared moves will likely apply, offering speed and clarity when it matters most. This practice rewires the mind toward anticipation rather than surprise. Anticipation is an unfair advantage. It converts friction into momentum because action is already mapped out. Another essential shift is separating identity from event. Failure is an event. Competence is a process. When identity collapses around a setback, "I'm a failure," recovery becomes murky and slow. Replace identity-based language with process-based language. Say, "This attempt failed, The process requires adjustment. Use verbs that imply doing and learning, experimenting, refining, practicing. Speak to future self. I will test a different approach and track outcomes for 2 weeks. These statements orient attention toward controllable effort and away from fuss judgment. Create ritualized microactions to translate learning into habit. Setbacks often expose the need for specific skills, clearer communication, better planning, stronger emotional regulation. For each exposed gap, choose a micro-habit that is small enough to be unavoidable. If clarity was missing, commit to 1-sentence summaries before any meeting for 30 days. If emotional reactivity stalled judgment, commit to a 3-breath pause before responding to triggering messages. Micro-habits compound because they are executed consistently. They transform abstract lessons into automatic competence. Use a flip-the-question method to find opportunities embedded in setbacks. Ask, what doors does this close, and what doors does it open? A lost deal might close one revenue path, but open time to build a better product or to cultivate a higher quality client base. Reframing in this way surfaces advantages that were hidden by disappointment. Make a 2-column list: closed doors, open doors. For each open door, write one concrete next step. This exercise moves attention from scarcity to options, which is the psychological engine of action. Mindset alone will not carry progress. Structure must follow. Build a small, measurable plan that is tied to the lesson extracted from the setback. Use time-bound experiments, 3 attempts, 2 weeks each, with a single metric. For example, if the lesson is that communication missed the mark, track average meeting clarity score using a 1-question feedback form after each meeting for 2 weeks. These metrics do not need to be perfect. They provide direction and remove wishful thinking. Actionable measurement converts vague intentions into operational progress. Real-world application looks like this. A manager loses a client because the solution did not map to the client's top priority. The manager pauses, writes the facts in 1 sentence, conducts an after-action review, and designs an experiment. Add a 1-page priority map to the next proposal and pilot it with an internal peer for feedback. The manager also adopts a micro-habit. Before any client call, complete a 1-paragraph priority check. Within 3 cycles, proposals become more aligned, win rates increase, and the manager gains a clearer sense of client language, all because setback was treated as data to iterate on. Emotional resilience grows through repeated practice of these steps. Each successful experiment reinforces a deeper conviction. Setbacks are not existential. They are information-rich opportunities. That conviction becomes embodied when the body recognizes the process and relaxes faster after the initial jolt. The chest eases, the mind sharpens, and decisions come with measured confidence. That physiological shift, trained through ritual and repetition, is invaluable because it preserves cognitive bandwidth for solving problems rather than spinning in worry. Finish each setback cycle with gratitude and an action promise. Write 1 sentence of gratitude for what the setback revealed and 1 sentence promising a specific next step. Gratitude here is not sentimental, it is tactical. It closes the loop by converting pain into purpose. Over months, these 1-sentence entries accumulate into a record of learning that can be reviewed and refined. That record becomes a ledger of capability rather than a list of wounds. Training the mind to win in every situation does not mean eliminating failure. It means building a reliable method for extracting advantage from failure. It requires stopping the runaway stories, naming facts, extracting lessons, designing focused experiments, implementing micro-habits, measuring progress, and closing the loop with gratitude and promise. This is a daily discipline that shapes not only outcomes but the inner weather that governs decision-making. Remember, durability comes from practice more than from innate talent. The same tools that turn small setbacks into small gains scale to larger crises because they are rooted in principle and repetition. When the next setback arrives, the pause will come faster, the questions will be sharper, and the experiments will be cleaner. That is the strategic advantage, not being immune to setbacks, but being systematically better at converting them into forward motion. The path forward is simple: treat setbacks as signals, not sentences, and make one precise, small move toward learning. every single time. Number 2, build mental discipline through daily constraints. Discipline is often misunderstood as punishment or restriction, but its true essence lies in freedom. The freedom to act with purpose and to achieve what matters most. Mental discipline is not about forcing yourself to endure endless discomfort. It is about constructing a framework that trains your mind to make intelligent, consistent choices, even when temptation, distraction, or fatigue calls for surrender. One of the most effective ways to cultivate this discipline is through daily constraints. By intentionally setting boundaries on your time, energy, and attention, you give your mind a structure within which it can operate efficiently, reliably, and creatively. Constraints are not limitations, they are accelerators, turning scattered effort into focused, measurable progress. A constraint begins with a simple question: what matters most, and where is the friction? Most people assume that freedom means having no rules, no deadlines, and no restrictions. The paradox is that freedom without boundaries often leads to indecision, wasted time, and reactive behavior. Choosing 3 non-negotiable actions for the day establishes a container. It might be finishing a specific work project, completing a focused workout, and journaling for 10 minutes. Each constraint forces the mind to prioritize, focus, and eliminate the unnecessary chatter that undermines achievement. The first step in building mental discipline through daily constraints is creating consistency. The human mind craves rhythm, even when it resists it. Daily rituals, waking at the same hour, blocking dedicated time for deep work, or setting a fixed bedtime, create a predictable environment that reduces mental friction. Consistency does not mean monotony. It is the soil in which discipline grows. By repeatedly showing up within a structure, the mind strengthens its ability to resist impulsive decisions and respond deliberately to challenges. Over time, small repeated actions compound into habits that operate beneath conscious effort, freeing mental energy for higher-order thinking. Constraints also function as clarity tools. Without limits, attention becomes scattered and diluted across tasks, messages, and responsibilities. Setting firm boundaries, such as checking email only twice per day or limiting social media to a single 20-minute session, forces attention to concentrate on what truly advances your goals. These deliberate restrictions transform distraction from an unavoidable threat into a manageable variable. With clarity, decision-making accelerates, mistakes diminish, and mental stamina grows. Constraints in this sense act as a lens, focusing the mind's energy on the highest value actions, rather than on reactive or trivial behaviors. Another critical dimension is self-imposed constraints that challenge the mind while remaining achievable. For example, reducing caffeine intake, committing to a silent commute, or writing without digital assistance are minor limits that teach self-control. These micro-challenges train the prefrontal cortex to regulate impulses, delay gratification, and tolerate discomfort. Each small victory strengthens mental resilience, like a muscle responding to progressive overload. Over weeks and months, these incremental exercises create a mind capable of greater patience, clarity, and intentionality in all decisions, not just those constrained by immediate discomfort. Structuring your environment is another powerful application of constraints. Remove easy distractions, arrange your workspace for efficiency, and establish visual cues that reinforce focus. The environment is often the silent enemy of discipline. Cluttered desks, persistent notifications, and easy access to diversions erode mental stamina over time. By constraining environmental variables, the mind faces fewer internal conflicts and conserves energy for deliberate action. Even subtle measures, such as placing a notebook on your desk or keeping a timer visible, signal to the brain the presence of constraints that guide attention toward constructive effort rather than default reactivity. Mental discipline is further cultivated by scheduling periods of deliberate limitation. Time boxing, for instance, divides the day into fixed blocks where only one type of activity occurs. During a 2-hour writing block, nothing else is allowed. During a workout, attention is devoted fully to form and breath. These structured periods cultivate focus because the mind is not negotiating between competing demands. Constraints here act as accelerators of skill development in oneness, ensuring that effort is concentrated and measurable. The sense of progress gained from completed blocks of focused action reinforces confidence, further strengthening mental control. A crucial aspect of discipline through constraints is embracing discomfort intentionally. Constraints often feel restrictive because they deny immediate gratification. Skipping a dessert, taking cold showers, or enforcing a rigid study schedule introduces manageable stressors that teach tolerance. By repeatedly navigating mild discomfort, the mind learns that satisfaction is not dependent on ease or indulgence, but on completion and mastery. This principle scales. The same mental resilience developed through small daily limits becomes indispensable when larger life challenges arise, such as handling unexpected responsibilities or maintaining composure under pressure. Tracking progress is another mechanism to solidify mental discipline. When constraints are imposed, measure adherence and outcomes. Journaling, habit trackers, or simple checklists offer objective feedback. This feedback loop transforms abstract ideals into tangible performance metrics. It answers the question, am I following through, and encourages reflection, adjustment, and accountability. By quantifying adherence to daily constraints, the mind experiences both reinforcement for success and clarity on areas needing improvement. This system replaces vague motivation with precise, actionable evidence of progress. Constraints also enhance creativity, rather than stifle it. The mind often thrives within limits because boundaries force inventive problem solving. When options are restricted, imagination finds pathways previously obscured by excess choice. Limiting resources, time, or tools triggers resourcefulness and encourages deep engagement with the task at hand. Artists, writers, and strategists often produce their best work when operating within defined parameters. Daily constraints train the mind to see possibilities within boundaries, reinforcing the principle that discipline and innovation are not opposites, but complementary forces. The social dimension of constraints cannot be overlooked. Protecting mental space from unproductive influences, distracting colleagues, excessive social commitments, or negative commentary reinforces personal discipline. Politely declining invitations, setting communication boundaries, and curating interactions are daily constraints that preserve energy for focused action. Social limits cultivate autonomy, enabling the mind to prioritize goals without constant external interference. The discipline gained from these measures strengthens not only personal productivity but also emotional stability and clarity. Finally, reflection consolidates the gains of disciplined constraints. Each evening or week, review adherence, note areas of resistance, and plan adjustments for improvement. Reflection ensures constraints remain effective and relevant, preventing rigidity or burnout. It transforms discipline from a passive routine into an evolving practice of self-mastery. By combining structure, measurement, and conscious evaluation, mental discipline becomes an engine that drives both personal growth and tangible results. Building mental discipline through daily constraints is not a short-term experiment but a lifelong strategy. It reshapes decision-making, strengthens focus, cultivates patience, and enhances emotional regulation. Each small constraint, practiced intentionally, compounds into profound mental resilience. The mind, trained to operate within boundaries, develops an intrinsic capacity to resist distraction, manage stress, and act with purpose. The freedom that comes from this discipline is liberating. It allows the individual to choose priorities deliberately, to act decisively under pressure, and to navigate life with clarity and confidence. Over time, the consistent application of daily constraints transforms ordinary routines into a foundation for extraordinary performance, ensuring that the mind becomes a reliable ally in every challenge and opportunity. Number 3, detach emotions to choose smarter responses. Emotions are powerful. They color every decision, amplify every perception, and shape the way reality feels in real time. Yet, they are not always aligned with effectiveness. When fear, anger, or frustration take the lead, the mind narrows, attention tunnels, and judgment falters. The ability to detach from emotional reactivity does not mean suppressing feelings or becoming cold. It means creating a disciplined space between impulse and action so that every response is guided by intelligence rather than instinct. This skill transforms everyday challenges into opportunities for strategic thinking and deliberate choice. Detaching emotions allows the mind to see clearly, act with precision, and maintain composure in situations where others are consumed by turmoil. The first step in detachment is awareness. Emotional responses emerge almost automatically, triggered by external events, internal narratives, or even memories. Catching the initial reaction requires a subtle shift, noticing sensations in the body before they translate into thought or action. A racing heart, shallow breathing, or tension in the jaw are signals that the emotional system has engaged. Observing these physical indicators without judgment is critical. Simply recognizing this is my fear responding or this is my frustration manifesting creates a gap between stimulus and response, a gap that is the foundation of smart decision-making. Once awareness is established, the next practice is labeling emotions accurately. Humans often conflate emotions or describe them vaguely, which makes them harder to regulate. Instead of saying, "I feel bad," specify the experience. "I feel anxious about missing this deadline," or "I feel irritated that my suggestion was dismissed." This precision gives the mind actionable data. Naming emotions transforms them from overwhelming forces into information that can guide practical responses. It allows the brain to shift from reactive mode to analytical mode, evaluating consequences and options instead of being swept along by immediate impulses. Detachment also requires reframing the meaning of the event triggering emotion. The mind tends to assign a narrative too quickly. "This failure defines me," or "this insult proves I am undervalued." Reframing interrupts this automatic story by separating fact from interpretation. Ask what actually happened, and what is the utility of this situation. By stripping away exaggeration and judgment, the mind creates a neutral field in which logical evaluation is possible. This clarity prevents decisions based on ego, pride, or panic, and replaces them with choices informed by reality rather than reaction. Breathing techniques reinforce emotional detachment. Simple, structured breathing, such as counting 4 seconds in, holding 4 seconds, exhaling 4 seconds, physically engages the parasympathetic nervous system, which counters the body's fight or flight response. This slows the emotional surge, lengthens the response window, and allows thought to regain priority over instinct. Pairing awareness with controlled breath develops a physiological anchor, ensuring that detachment becomes not only mental but embodied. Over time, these techniques strengthen the mind's capacity to remain composed under increasingly challenging circumstances. Cognitive rehearsal is another tool for intelligent emotional management. Visualize high-stress scenarios before they occur and practice responding with calm, rational actions. Picture criticism, urgent deadlines, or conflict with colleagues, and rehearse responses that focus on problem-solving rather than reactivity. This preparation trains neural pathways so that when real events unfold, the mind defaults to deliberate response patterns. Emotional detachment is easier when the brain has rehearsed control because familiarity reduces the intensity of surprise, creating space for rationality to guide action. Emotional detachment is reinforced by shifting focus to what can be controlled. Emotions often escalate when attention drifts to uncontrollable variables, other people's behavior, external circumstances, or imagined outcomes. Refocusing on actions within one's control, tone of voice, clarity of communication, or concrete steps toward a solution grounds the mind in practical problem solving. This approach does not deny the emotion but channels its energy into productive avenues. A mind oriented toward actionable control experiences less overwhelm and achieves higher quality decisions, even in situations that initially provoke strong feelings. Deliberate pause is another essential practice. When emotions spike, instinct is to respond immediately. Waiting even 30 seconds to a few minutes before reacting can dramatically improve outcomes. Use this time to check in with bodily sensations, label the emotion, and clarify the desired outcome. This pause prevents knee-jerk reactions that might damage relationships, compromise professional standing, or intensify conflict. Pausing teaches the mind that time is an ally, and thoughtful action is always superior to reactive behavior. Journaling amplifies emotional clarity and detachment. Writing down feelings and the circumstances that trigger them creates a reflective mirror, revealing patterns that often go unnoticed in the rush of daily life. Track triggers, physical sensations, and behavioral responses, then evaluate effectiveness after the fact. Over time, this practice allows one to anticipate emotional reactions, adjust strategies proactively, and detach with greater ease. It is a practical form of self-coaching that converts transient emotions into permanent insight. Detachment also requires humility, understanding that emotions are neither good nor bad, but signals to interpret intelligently. Resisting, suppressing, or shaming emotions tends to intensify them. Acceptance of the emotional experience, coupled with conscious choice about how to respond, transforms vulnerability into strategic advantage. By seeing emotions as guides rather than obstacles, the mind cultivates a form of mastery that is grounded in reality, self-awareness, and disciplined reasoning. The social environment amplifies emotional challenges, so practicing detachment in interactions is essential. When faced with criticism, provocation, or conflict, the initial surge of defensiveness can cloud judgment. Pause, breathe, and respond with measured language. Ask clarifying questions, seek evidence, or focus on shared goals instead of personal ego. Detachment does not mean passive acquiescence. It means responding in ways that maximize influence and minimize unnecessary conflict. By controlling the emotional tone of interactions, one gains leverage in negotiations, leadership, and personal relationships. Another key strategy is separating immediate reactions from long-term values. Emotional impulses often demand instant gratification or revenge. Consider the outcome in a day, week, or month. Aligning responses with principles rather than feelings ensures that actions reinforce rather than undermine goals. A disciplined mind evaluates whether a response builds credibility, strengthens relationships, or advances objectives. Decisions guided by principle rather than impulse produce consistent, sustainable results and prevent the chaos that arises from unchecked emotional reactivity. Mindset exercises strengthen this ability further. Daily reflection on emotional triggers, reviewing moments when detachment was practiced successfully, and noting lessons learned from failures reinforces the neural pathways of rational control. Over time, these practices create automaticity. When the initial surge of emotion appears, the mind instinctively inserts a reflective gap, labels the sensation, and chooses the most effective response. Emotional detachment becomes a skill, applied seamlessly across all areas of life. Ultimately, detaching emotions to choose smarter responses is not about being robotic or disconnected. It is about creating a disciplined, intentional mental space in which the mind operates with clarity and precision. By combining awareness, labeling, reframing, controlled breathing, rehearsal, focus on controllables, deliberate pauses, journaling, and value-aligned decision-making, every emotional spike can be transformed into an opportunity for intelligent action. This approach cultivates resilience, composure, and strategic insight, turning situations that would overwhelm others into opportunities for decisive, advantageous moves. This practice strengthens with repetition and intentionality. Each time an emotional reaction is observed, analyzed, and responded to deliberately, the mind becomes more capable, more adaptable, and more intelligent. Life continues to present challenges, provocations, and surprises, but the disciplined mind navigates these situations with calm authority, measured insight, and constructive action. Over months and years, this capability compounds, transforming ordinary responses into deliberate, high-value decisions. Emotional detachment is not avoidance. It is mastery, and mastery is the path to consistent, effective, and empowered living. Number 4, strengthen focus by eliminating invisible drains. Focus is one of the most valuable skills a person can cultivate, yet it is constantly under siege by forces both external and internal. Distractions often come disguised as convenience, habit, or even necessity. Invisible drains, small, unnoticed interruptions, mental clutter, and habitual diversions chip away at attention quietly, leaving people exhausted without realizing why. Strengthening focus begins with identifying these hidden leaks of energy and attention, then systematically removing or managing them. The process is deliberate, requiring both honesty and courage, because invisible drains are often embedded in routines, relationships, and personal tendencies that feel normal. Start by observing how your attention flows throughout the day. Keep a simple log for several days, noting what captures your mind and pulls it away from meaningful work. This is not about judgment or guilt. It is about gathering information. Invisible drains often masquerade as necessary actions, repeatedly checking email, lingering on social media, or multitasking between tasks that require deep thinking. Recording these moments with specificity uncovers patterns that the mind alone might overlook. This practice reveals which habits are harmless and which silently erode focus. Eliminate or limit inputs that fragment attention. Modern life is saturated with notifications, alerts, and messages designed to pull focus instantly. Every ping or pop-up interrupts neural flow, costing not just the seconds it takes to glance at a phone, but the additional minutes required to regain deep concentration. Establishing strict boundaries, disabling non-essential notifications, batching communications, or creating phone-free work periods restores the mind's natural ability to sustain attention. This is not deprivation. It is reclaiming mental bandwidth for tasks that actually matter. Environmental factors play a crucial role in sustaining focus. Cluttered spaces, scattered materials, and visual noise trigger micro-decisions that constantly demand attention. The mind registers disorder, even subconsciously, creating cognitive load that diminishes clarity and patience. Organize your workspace to reflect purpose and function. Keep essential tools within reach. Eliminate non-essential items, and designate areas for different activities. A clean, intentional environment signals the brain that the space is reserved for focus, reducing the effort required to maintain attention and amplifying the quality of output. Mental clutter is equally insidious. Thoughts about past mistakes, unfinished tasks, or imagined problems drain cognitive energy silently. Develop a practice to externalize these intrusions. Journaling, list-making, or voice notes allow the mind to release information without abandoning it. For example, jot down tomorrow's priorities, concerns, or ideas for later review. This creates a clear mental field for the task at hand, while assuring the mind that important matters are accounted for. Removing mental clutter prevents subtle distraction from undermining productivity and sharpens cognitive clarity. Time management strategies reinforce the elimination of invisible drains. Instead of attempting to multitask, which splits attention and reduces efficiency, allocate dedicated blocks for specific types of work. Deep work sessions, free from interruptions, allow the brain to achieve sustained focus and enter a state of flow. Between sessions, schedule brief periods for low-stakes tasks or recovery so that energy is replenished rather than dissipated. Consistent rhythm trains the brain to expect and respect periods of intense concentration, minimizing the effect of habitual disruptions. Energy management is another hidden component of focus. Low physical energy, irregular meals, or insufficient rest can amplify the impact of distractions. The mind becomes reactive rather than proactive when energy is scarce, making small interruptions far more disruptive. Prioritize sleep, hydration, and nutrition to maintain stable cognitive function. Micro breaks during work, stretching, short walks, or controlled breathing revitalize the nervous system and prevent invisible drains from exploiting fatigue. High energy creates a buffer that strengthens focus and sustains engagement over extended periods. Relationships and social inputs are also invisible drains if unexamined. Constantly accommodating others' priorities, engaging in unnecessary debates, or absorbing negative attitudes can erode attention. Strengthening focus often requires setting boundaries, declining unproductive requests, minimizing gossip, and choosing interactions that are constructive or inspiring. Social discipline does not imply isolation. It means selecting inputs intentionally to preserve mental resources for what truly matters. By curating influence, the mind remains directed toward goals rather than diffused across trivial trimmering. Technology, while powerful, is a major conduit for invisible drains. Endless scrolling, news updates, and algorithm-driven content create compulsive engagement that consumes hours unnoticed. Implementing deliberate constraints, scheduled email and social media checks, Using website blockers or creating offline periods restores autonomy. Even small adjustments, like turning off autoplay or limiting device usage in specific contexts, significantly increase cognitive bandwidth. By managing technological inputs, focus becomes intentional rather than reactionary, and the mind can prioritize value-generating activities. Micro-habits strengthen focus over time. Practices such as beginning each day with a defined priority, ending sessions with a brief reflection, or reviewing progress weekly create reinforcement loops. These small, consistent actions prevent drift and gradually solidify a high-capacity attention system. By embedding attention-strengthening rituals into daily life, invisible drains are systematically minimized, and concentration becomes both effortless and habitual. Micro-habits compound over months, producing substantial increases in clarity, decision quality, and productivity. Visualization enhances focus by directing the mind toward outcomes rather than distractions. Before starting a task, imagine completing it fully, experiencing the satisfaction, clarity, and freedom that result. This primes the brain to resist interruptions and aligns attention with intention. Mental rehearsal is a subtle yet potent tool. When the mind has a vivid image of the end state, trivial diversions lose allure, and engagement with the present task intensifies. Visualization bridges intention and action, helping the mind navigate invisible drains with precision. Reflection amplifies the effects of eliminating distractions. At the end of the day, review what drained attention, what strategies worked, and how focus was maintained or lost. Note patterns and implement adjustments immediately. Reflection is not self-criticism, it is feedback. By analyzing the day's performance with honesty and curiosity, one converts unnoticed energy losses into actionable insight. This habit trains the mind to spot potential distractions before they manifest, creating a self-reinforcing loop of heightened awareness and sharpened focus. Detaching from multitasking entirely is another transformative practice. Dividing attention between multiple tasks reduces both quality and efficiency, while increasing susceptibility to distraction. Commit fully to one action at a time, whether it is writing, problem-solving, or learning. Single tasking allows the brain to immerse deeply, reduces invisible cognitive friction, and enhances both creativity and retention. Over time, the skill of deep immersion becomes automatic, making focus a default mode rather than a fleeting achievement. Invisible drains often operate through habits that seem benign, checking messages reflexively, leaving tabs open, or reacting immediately to interruptions. To counteract them, introduce deliberate friction to unwanted behaviors. For example, move the phone to another room, close unrelated tabs, or schedule specific times for communication. These small barriers force conscious engagement with tasks and prevent automatic distraction from seeping into productive periods. Discipline in structuring attention creates momentum that amplifies mental energy and sustains high performance. Ultimately, strengthening focus by eliminating invisible drains is about reclaiming control over attention, energy, and intention. It requires honesty in recognizing the subtle forces that erode concentration, courage to restructure habits and environment, and consistency in practicing rituals that reinforce attention. Each small adjustment, organizing space, limiting inputs, managing energy, cultivating micro-habits, and reflecting on outcomes, accumulates, transforming scattered effort into high-impact results. The mind, trained in this way, becomes resilient, deliberate, and capable of sustained engagement, producing clarity, creativity, and achievement far beyond what is possible when distractions dictate the day. As these strategies are applied over time, focus evolves from a fragile skill into a reliable foundation for action. Invisible drains lose their grip, decisions become clearer, and energy aligns with intention. The result is a mind that navigates complexity with composure, executes with precision, and maintains a steady trajectory toward meaningful goals. Strengthening focus is not merely about productivity. It is about reclaiming the capacity to think, act, and live intentionally in a world designed to fragment attention, turning unseen drains into opportunities for growth and mastery. Number 5. Create automatic habits for resilient thinking. Resilience is not an innate trait that only a few possess. It is a skill that can be systematically built and reinforced through habitual action. The mind's response to challenge, stress, or uncertainty is shaped by patterns established over time. Automatic habits are the scaffolding of resilient thinking. They operate beneath conscious thought, allowing clarity, steadiness, and adaptability to emerge even in the most turbulent circumstances. By creating rituals and routines that cultivate mental flexibility, emotional regulation, and strategic reflection, resilience becomes a default mode rather than a sporadic response. The first step in developing these habits is intentional repetition. The brain learns through consistent exposure. Repeated behaviors strengthen neural pathways that encode patterns of thought and action. Small, daily exercises designed to reinforce resilience accumulate into profound mental agility. For example, dedicating 5 minutes each morning to reflect on potential challenges and plan responses primes the mind to anticipate adversity rather than react to it impulsively. This early exposure trains the brain to approach difficulties strategically, making calm problem-solving the automatic response. Journaling serves as a powerful tool for embedding resilient thought into daily life. Writing about experiences, decisions, and emotional responses clarifies patterns, exposes assumptions, and reinforces learning from setbacks. Over time, this practice transforms into a self-guided feedback loop. The mind becomes accustomed to examining challenges analytically, distilling lessons, and generating proactive strategies without conscious prompting. Automatic habits of reflection allow resilience to operate without requiring continuous deliberation, turning experiences into structured growth. Visualization is another mechanism for reinforcing resilient thinking. By mentally rehearsing challenges and successful navigation of adversity, the mind creates templates for effective response. Visualizing setbacks and imagining productive actions primes the nervous system to act decisively when real stress occurs. This practice strengthens neural circuits associated with composure, creativity, and problem-solving, making constructive reactions habitual rather than situational. When adversity arrives, the brain recognizes patterns from rehearsal, reducing panic and fostering confidence. Consistency is enhanced through environmental cues. Habits form more readily when reminders and triggers are embedded in daily routines. Leaving a notebook on a workspace for reflection, setting alarms for mindfulness pauses, or placing motivational prompts in visible locations signals the mind to engage in resilience-building behaviors automatically. By structuring the environment to reinforce desired patterns, the brain requires less conscious effort to enact adaptive responses. This alignment of context and behavior makes resilience a built-in feature of daily life, rather than a sporadic effort. Resilient thinking also emerges from deliberate exposure to controlled stressors. Facing minor challenges intentionally, such as tackling tasks outside of comfort zones, engaging in public speaking, or practicing difficult conversations, trains the mind to navigate uncertainty without overreacting. Each small encounter with manageable adversity strengthens neural circuits that govern problem-solving under pressure. This principle mirrors physical training. Muscles grow stronger when subjected to progressive stress, and the mind becomes more durable through repeated structured challenges. Daily routines that integrate reflection, preparation, and controlled stress create a scaffolding for automatic resilience. Begin by allocating time for mindful evaluation of the day's events, identifying moments where emotional impulses arose, and analyzing alternative responses. Pair this with forward-looking planning. Consider potential difficulties tomorrow or in the near future, and formulate proactive strategies. By repeating this sequence consistently, the mind internalizes patterns of anticipation, reflection, and adaptation, which operate automatically when new challenges surface. Language shapes resilient thought as well. Adopting intentional phrasing influences perception and emotional response. Replace reactive statements like "this is impossible" with constructive reframing. "This is a challenge I can learn from," or "I will identify the next best step." Over time, habitual language rewires the mind to interpret adversity as opportunity rather than threat. Automatic resilience is reinforced when the vocabulary of thought consistently frames obstacles in terms of growth, solution, and capability rather than limitation. Micro habits compound into significant mental strength. Practices such as daily gratitude, controlled breathing during stress, or brief meditation sessions train the nervous system to maintain equilibrium. When repeated consistently, these small actions accumulate into robust mental patterns that stabilize thought, even when circumstances are unpredictable. Automatic resilience emerges from this compounding effect. The brain learns that emotional turbulence can be navigated calmly, creating a baseline of stability that underpins effective decision-making. Reading and learning also cultivate resilient thinking by exposing the mind to diverse perspectives and problem-solving approaches. Consistent engagement with challenging material trains the brain to absorb complexity, consider alternatives, and tolerate ambiguity. Over time, the habit of seeking insight from varied sources strengthens adaptive thinking. The mind learns to anticipate multiple outcomes, weigh probabilities, and respond to setbacks with strategy rather than panic. Resilience becomes not only emotional, but cognitive, encompassing the capacity to process information and respond intelligently under pressure. Accountability reinforces automatic habits of resilience. Sharing intentions, reflections, or progress with a mentor, colleague, or friend creates external structure that strengthens internal discipline. When the mind knows that actions are observed and evaluated, habitual adherence is more likely. Accountability also introduces perspective, helping identify blind spots or ineffective strategies. Combining personal discipline with structured social reinforcement embeds resilience more deeply, ensuring that it is expressed consistently and not only during moments of conscious effort. Routine exposure to uncertainty fosters mental flexibility, a core component of resilience. By deliberately varying tasks, schedules, or approaches, the mind becomes accustomed to adapting without emotional derailment. For instance, alternating problem-solving techniques, experimenting with new workflows, or adjusting priorities in response to changing circumstances trains the brain to operate effectively in dynamic environments. Automatic resilience emerges as the mind recognizes patterns of adaptability and applies them instinctively when confronted with unpredictable conditions. Reflection after challenges consolidates learning into permanent habits. Review responses to adversity, noting what worked, what didn't, and why. Record insights and integrate them into future strategies. Over time, this iterative approach embeds resilience into the architecture of thought, ensuring that each encounter with difficulty strengthens automatic mental responses. The brain develops a repertoire of effective strategies, reducing reliance on trial and error, and enhancing confidence in navigating complex situations. Emotional regulation is another pillar of automatic resilient thinking. Practices such as controlled breathing, pausing before responding, and cognitive reframing cultivate the ability to respond deliberately, rather than react impulsively. Repeated application of these techniques strengthens neural pathways associated with calm decision-making. Over time, regulation becomes habitual. The mind naturally defaults to composed, rational responses even when stress is intense. This built-in stability supports both personal effectiveness and constructive interactions with others. The integration of preparation, reflection, controlled exposure, and micro-habits creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Each element amplifies the others. Preparation informs reflection. Reflection guides practice. Practice strengthens habit, and habit solidifies adaptive response. Over months and years, this cycle ingrains resilience into the subconscious, producing a mind that navigates challenge with clarity, confidence, and creativity. Automatic resilience allows focus, energy, and strategy to remain intact under pressure, transforming adversity into opportunity for growth. Ultimately, creating automatic habits for resilient thinking is about engineering the mind to respond effectively under all circumstances. It requires deliberate repetition, environmental design, language control, exposure to controlled challenges, reflection, and integration of micro-habits. These practices collectively transform resilience from an effortful act into a default mode, enabling consistent clarity, adaptability, and composure. Life will inevitably present obstacles, uncertainty, and stress, but the mind trained through these habits navigates complexity with steadiness, converting challenge into a platform for achievement and long-term growth. Number 6. Turn pressure moments into performance triggers. Pressure is a universal companion in the pursuit of meaningful goals. It arrives unannounced, manifesting as deadlines, expectations, high-stakes conversations, or unforeseen challenges. Most people instinctively resist pressure, interpreting it as a signal of danger, stress, or inadequacy. Yet, pressure itself is neutral. It is a resource waiting to be harnessed, a mechanism that, when properly understood, can elevate performance rather than hinder it. Turning pressure moments into performance triggers requires deliberate mindset training, physiological awareness, and actionable strategies that convert stress into precision, focus, and energy. The first essential step is perception. How pressure is interpreted determines its effect. Viewing high-stakes situations as threats triggers a cascade of stress responses, elevated heart rate, constricted attention, and impulsive thinking. Reframing pressure as a challenge or an opportunity flips this response. When the brain interprets urgency as a call to mobilize skill, adrenaline becomes fuel rather than a distraction. This shift in perception transforms fear into focus and nervous energy into operational momentum. Understanding the power of mindset is the foundation for converting pressure into performance. Physiological regulation is a critical component of harnessing pressure. The body reacts first to stress, often before conscious thought can intervene. Rapid breathing, tense muscles, and elevated heart rate are signals that the nervous system is mobilizing. Techniques such as slow, deliberate breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, and grounding exercises help channel physiological arousal into controlled energy. For example, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4, exhaling for 6, and repeating several times can lower tension and increase oxygenation to the brain. These adjustments allow clarity to emerge, turning reactive panic into deliberate, high-functioning focus. Preparation is the armor that transforms pressure into performance. Anticipating scenarios where stakes are high and rehearsing responses reduces uncertainty, which is the primary amplifier of stress. Mental simulation of potential challenges, outlining strategies, and practicing communication or decision-making under timed conditions creates familiarity. When the real moment arrives, the mind and body are primed to act efficiently. This reduces hesitation, minimizes errors, and ensures that pressure is experienced as an activating signal rather than a paralyzing force. Focus is sharpened by prioritization under pressure. High-stress situations often present multiple simultaneous demands, creating mental overload. The ability to identify the most consequential action and execute it decisively is key to leveraging pressure. Techniques such as triaging tasks, asking which action produces the greatest impact right now, or breaking complex problems into micro steps, enable the mind to operate within manageable parameters. Prioritization converts cognitive pressure into structured, actionable sequences, allowing performance to thrive despite external intensity. Routine exposure to pressure strengthens neural resilience. Controlled practice in simulated high-stakes environments trains the brain to respond with composure. For instance, timed exercises, mock presentations, or role-playing difficult conversations replicate stress while maintaining safety. Over time, the brain associates high-pressure cues with practice competence rather than fear. This conditioning reduces anxiety and enhances confidence, allowing the nervous system to channel energy productively. Pressure, when normalized, becomes a trigger for engagement, focus, and optimal execution. Emotional mastery is indispensable. Pressure often elicits strong feelings, fear, frustration, excitement, that can derail judgment if unchecked. Recognizing emotional surges without being dominated by them creates space for rational thought. Labeling emotions succinctly, "I feel anxious but capable," reduces their disruptive power. This conscious acknowledgement prevents reactive decision-making and allows strategic evaluation of options. Emotional regulation under duress converts instinctual reactions into deliberate, high-quality choices, ensuring that performance is guided by competence rather than impulse. Micro habits enhance performance under pressure. Pre-performance rituals, whether a brief mental checklist, a physical warm-up, or a focused breathing sequence signal the mind that a high-stakes task is underway and prime neural circuits for action. These repeated cues automate readiness, reducing cognitive load in critical moments. The ritual becomes a trigger for focused energy, transforming the physiological and psychological effects of pressure into consistent, reliable execution. Visualization strengthens preparedness and confidence. Imagining scenarios with intense stakes and mentally rehearsing successful actions embeds a sense of mastery. The mind cannot easily distinguish vivid mental rehearsal from real experience. So this practice conditions both emotional response and neural coordination. Anticipating challenges and visualizing solutions allows individuals to enter real pressure situations with a sense of control, clarity, and readiness. This pre-exposure diminishes fear while amplifying precision and decisive decision. Speed under pressure is cultivated through practice and structured thinking. High-pressure moments often demand rapid choices, where hesitation incurs cost. Establishing mental frameworks for evaluating options quickly, criteria such as risk versus reward, impact versus effort, or probability of success, provides a template for swift, confident decisions. Training the mind to apply these frameworks automatically ensures that pressure catalyzes productive action instead of paralyzing thought. Speed and accuracy become linked, turning urgency into a performance amplifier. Reflective debriefing reinforces learning from pressure. After a high-stakes moment, reviewing decisions, outcomes, and emotional responses embeds insights into future practice. Questions such as, what worked well? Where did stress influence judgment? How can preparation be improved? Create a feedback loop. Each reflection strengthens mental models, builds confidence, and fine-tunes strategies for managing subsequent pressure. The iterative process ensures that each encounter with stress enhances capability rather than leaving unresolved tension. Energy management supports performance in high-pressure environments. Physical condition, nutrition, hydration, and sleep influence how the body reacts to stress. A well-rested, nourished, and physically engaged body can convert adrenaline into focused action rather than chaotic energy. Micro breaks, stretching, or momentary pauses in high-stakes contexts maintain mental sharpness and prevent burnout. The alignment of physical and mental resources amplifies the beneficial effects of pressure, making execution more reliable and precise. Perspective transforms pressure into opportunity. Instead of perceiving intense situations as threats to status, reputation, or comfort, viewing them as arenas to demonstrate capability reframes the experience. Pressure signals moments where skill, preparation, and composure can produce extraordinary results. This mindset shifts focus from avoidance to engagement, triggering motivation and heightening attentiveness. When pressure is interpreted as a platform for excellence, the nervous system responds with mobilized energy, focus, and adaptive creativity. Social awareness and communication under pressure further elevate performance. Clear, concise, and confident articulation ensures that high-stakes interactions remain productive. Listening actively, responding deliberately, and managing emotional tone influence outcomes and reduce unnecessary stress. By controlling communication and observing social dynamics, the mind can direct both internal and external responses strategically. The ability to navigate interpersonal pressure while maintaining clarity amplifies effectiveness in leadership, negotiation, and collaboration. Incorporating deliberate challenges into daily routines strengthens the habitual response to pressure. Practicing tasks with time constraints, simulated interruptions, or unexpected adjustments builds neural and psychological flexibility. These experiences train the mind to pivot efficiently, maintain composure, and identify optimal responses quickly. Over time, the repeated exposure transforms the fear of pressure into a familiar cue for focus, clarity, and performance. Ultimately, turning pressure moments into performance triggers is a discipline of perception, preparation, and action. By reshaping how stress is interpreted, regulating physiology, rehearsing mentally and physically, and embedding micro habits of readiness, the mind converts intensity into opportunity. Each encounter with pressure reinforces neural pathways associated with clarity, decisiveness, and composure, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of high performance. Pressure becomes an ally, sharpening focus, energizing action, and unlocking potential that remains dormant in ordinary circumstances. The individual who masters this process learns to navigate high-stakes situations, not with fear or hesitation, but with skill, precision, and strategic intent, transforming every moment of tension into a launchpad for achievement. Number 7. Rewrite inner dialogue to command outcomes. The dialogue we carry inside our minds is far more than background noise. It shapes perception, frames decisions, and ultimately dictates results. Every thought has the potential to either reinforce limitation or expand capability. Most people allow automatic, unexamined inner chatter to run unchecked, reinforcing fear, doubt, and hesitation. To command outcomes, it is essential to intentionally rewrite this inner dialogue, replacing passive, reactive thoughts with deliberate, constructive statements that orient the mind toward action, resilience, and achievement. The process is subtle, continuous, and profoundly transformative, creating a mindset that consistently generates results rather than waiting for them. Begin by observing the current state of inner dialogue. Awareness is the foundation of change. Pay attention to recurring narratives, self-limiting assumptions, and habitual judgments. This requires disciplined mindfulness, noting every "I can't," "I'm not ready," or "this is too hard" without adding emotion or justification. Recognize the patterns and catalog them mentally or in writing. Identifying these default statements is critical because they reveal the unseen rules that govern behavior, and they form the starting point for intentional rewriting. Without this step, attempts to change outcomes are inconsistent and superficial. Once the patterns are recognized, replace them with purpose-driven statements that guide action. Language has a direct effect on neurological pathways. What the mind repeatedly hears internally begins to dictate both perception and behavior. For example, replace "I'm not sure I can handle this" with "I will focus on the next right action." The difference is profound. The first statement emphasizes limitation and uncertainty, while the second directs attention to tangible, controllable steps. Rewriting inner dialogue is not empty positivity. It is precise mental engineering designed to influence perception, motivation, and execution. Consistency is crucial for effectiveness. One-off attempts to rewrite inner dialogue produce temporary change at best. The mind needs repetition and reinforcement to override years of automatic thought patterns. Use triggers throughout the day, morning routines, transitions between tasks, or moments of stress to practice deliberate self-talk. Statements like "I adapt quickly to challenges," "I am capable of finding solutions," or "every obstacle is data to act on" become anchors that stabilize focus and guide behavior. Over time, these statements operate automatically, creating a default state of proactive, solution-oriented thinking. Visualization amplifies the impact of rewired inner dialogue. Pair constructive self-talk with mental imagery of success, competence, and decisive action. As the brain rehearses scenarios with empowered language, it creates neural templates that align thought, emotion, and behavior. When real challenges arise, the mind instinctively draws from these rehearsed patterns, reducing hesitation and enhancing clarity. Visualization reinforces verbal framing, ensuring that inner dialogue shapes not only intention but also physiological readiness, emotional equilibrium, and cognitive efficiency. Rewriting inner dialogue also requires eliminating internal contradictions. Often people issue conflicting commands to themselves. "I must act confidently, but I feel unprepared." These contradictions dilute focus and undermine action. Replace dualities with integrated, commanding statements that unify thought and intent. "I respond with clarity and precision," or "I gather information and decide effectively." Coherent internal messaging aligns cognitive and emotional systems, ensuring that every part of the mind supports performance, rather than fragmenting under tension. Contextualizing challenges through inner dialogue is another powerful technique. Pressure and obstacles are neutral. They acquire meaning through perception. Self-talk can transform perception by framing obstacles as opportunities. Phrases such as "this situation is a platform to demonstrate skill," or "every difficulty trains me to act with discipline," prime the mind to seek leverage rather than succumb to stress. Reframe dialogue shifts the default response from avoidance or anxiety to curiosity, calculation, and proactive engagement, allowing outcomes to be influenced through conscious intention rather than reaction. Automaticity is built by embedding inner dialogue into micro-habits. Short, repeatable statements at predictable moments, before meetings, during transitions, or at the start of tasks, create neural reinforcement. Over weeks, these statements no longer require conscious effort. They operate as automatic prompts, guiding thought and action. Automatic resilience in thinking emerges, producing a mind that reacts to high-stakes scenarios with precision, focus, and creativity. The repetition of empowered dialogue gradually replaces the old, limiting scripts that previously dictated behavior. Journaling consolidates and extends the rewiring of inner dialogue. Writing down intentions, self-directed statements, and reflections on outcomes strengthens neural pathways and provides a record of progress. Reviewing journal entries reveals patterns of effectiveness, highlights persistent, limiting thoughts, and reinforces adaptive language. By externalizing internal dialogue, the mind receives a tangible reference, further embedding constructive thought into both conscious and subconscious processes. Writing transforms fleeting self-talk into a structured practice that amplifies its impact. Language structure matters in shaping outcomes. Use action-oriented verbs, present tense, and positive framing. Replace "I hope to succeed" with "I act decisively and achieve results," or "I might overcome this" with "I navigate this challenge with skill." Present tense, declarative statements engage the mind as though the desired behavior is already in motion, aligning cognitive and emotional systems to produce congruent action. Subtle shifts in phrasing directly influence motivation, confidence, and problem-solving ability. Emotional reinforcement strengthens the effect of new dialogue. Pair self-directed statements with controlled physiological responses, upright posture, steady breathing, and focused eye contact. The body amplifies the message of the mind, creating a feedback loop where confidence, calm, and determination are mutually reinforced. Over time, the neural and physical integration of language and posture produces a resilient, empowered state that manifests in decisions, communication, and performance. Reflection ensures that inner dialogue remains effective and relevant. At the end of each day or week, evaluate whether self-talk supported optimal decision-making, whether it reduced stress, and whether it produced tangible progress. Identify areas where dialogue reverted to automatic, limiting patterns, and update phrasing to address gaps. This iterative approach prevents stagnation, ensuring that inner dialogue evolves alongside experience, complexity, and ambition. Continuous refinement transforms the mind into a responsive, self-directing system. The integration of intentional language, visualization, micro-habits, journaling, and reflection produces a self-reinforcing cycle. Each reinforced statement increases confidence, clarity, and focus, which in turn generates better decisions and measurable outcomes. The mind becomes a command center rather than a passive receiver of circumstances. Internalized dialogue dictates response, frames perception, and energizes purposeful behavior. The individual who consistently rewires their inner language gains the ability to shape reality, influence results, and navigate challenges with authority. Ultimately, rewriting inner dialogue is about creating mental infrastructure that reliably guides action, thought, and emotion. It converts passive reflection into deliberate command, enabling the mind to operate with intention under pressure. Over time, this practice transforms internal conversation from a source of doubt and hesitation into a driver of competence, resilience, and achievement. Outcomes are no longer left to chance. They become the natural product of disciplined, intentional, and powerful self-directed thought. The mind, once harnessed in this way, becomes a tool to generate results, shape circumstances, and consistently perform at the highest level, turning every thought into an instrument of influence and every decision into a stepping stone toward mastery. Number 8. Prepare contingency plans before challenges arise. Life is unpredictable. Even the most carefully crafted plans encounter obstacles, delays, and unforeseen complications. The difference between floundering under pressure and navigating challenges with clarity lies not in luck or innate ability, but in preparation. Contingency planning is the practice of anticipating possible obstacles and mapping out proactive responses before they occur. This is not about fear or pessimism. It is about empowering the mind with foresight, flexibility, and actionable strategy. By preparing contingency plans, the mind gains a framework that transforms uncertainty into manageable variables, turning potential crises into structured opportunities for decisive action. The first step is to assess potential vulnerabilities in any situation. Every project, relationship, or goal carries inherent risks, though they often go unnoticed until they manifest. Begin by identifying critical points where outcomes could be disrupted. Consider deadlines, resource dependencies, interpersonal dynamics, technical failures, and environmental factors. By systematically evaluating what could go wrong, the mind constructs a mental map of possible obstacles. This exercise is both analytical and creative, demanding imagination as well as realism. Anticipating disruption before it arrives ensures that when pressure hits, the response is measured and confident rather than reactive and chaotic. Once risks are identified, the next phase is devising actionable responses. Contingency planning requires specificity. Vague intentions such as "I'll figure it out if it happens" are ineffective. For each potential scenario, define concrete steps that can be implemented immediately. For example, if a critical presentation is at risk of technical failure, the plan might include a backup device, printed materials, or alternative communication strategies. By specifying actions for each risk, the mind is equipped with a playbook that reduces uncertainty and ensures that decision-making remains deliberate, not improvised under stress. Prioritization is essential. Not every possible complication warrants equal attention. Focus on risks that carry the highest impact on outcomes, or those that are most likely to occur. Allocate energy and resources to these scenarios first, while maintaining awareness of less probable disruptions. This strategic prioritization prevents overwhelm, ensuring that preparation remains manageable and effective. It also instills confidence. Knowing that critical contingencies have been addressed allows the mind to focus on execution rather than worry. Mental rehearsal reinforces contingency plans. Visualize potential challenges unfolding and imagine yourself implementing the planned responses. Engage all senses. Hear the environment, feel your posture, and picture the steps you will take. This mental practice conditions both brain and body to respond automatically, reducing hesitation and panic when the actual moment arrives. Visualization converts abstract preparation into embodied readiness, creating neural pathways that support calm, efficient action under pressure. Flexibility is the hallmark of effective contingency planning. While it is critical to have defined steps for potential scenarios, rigidity undermines adaptability. Each situation carries unique nuances, and plans must be interpreted dynamically. The objective is to provide the mind with options rather than scripts. By rehearsing multiple approaches and evaluating the effectiveness of alternative responses, the brain develops agility, able to pivot and recalibrate when circumstances deviate from expectations. Flexibility ensures that preparation strengthens performance rather than constraining it. Tools and resources should be organized in advance to support contingency strategies. Essential materials, contact lists, reference documents, and backup equipment should be easily accessible. Reducing friction in implementing a plan allows the mind to focus on execution instead of scrambling for supplies or information. Preparation extends beyond strategy. It encompasses logistical readiness, ensuring that practical barriers do not undermine even the most thoughtfully designed contingency. A key dimension of contingency planning is emotional readiness. Challenges trigger instinctive stress reactions, and even the most detailed plans are ineffective if the mind is overwhelmed. Anticipating the emotional impact of potential obstacles and rehearsing responses stabilizes thought and behavior. Techniques such as controlled breathing, centering routines, or brief pauses before action equip the mind to approach difficulties with clarity and composure. Emotional preparation is as vital as logistical preparation, creating a foundation for resilience in high-pressure situations. Collaboration amplifies the effectiveness of contingency plans. Engaging team members, colleagues, or mentors in anticipating risks and designing responses distributes responsibility, generates alternative perspectives, and uncovers blind spots. Collective planning fosters shared understanding and alignment, ensuring that each participant can act decisively when challenges arise. By integrating diverse insights, contingency strategies become more robust, comprehensive, and reliable. Effective collaboration transforms individual preparedness into coordinated, collective capability. Regular review and iteration are critical. Contingency plans are not static documents. They must evolve as circumstances, knowledge, and objectives change. After encountering challenges, reflect on what worked, what was ineffective, and what new risks have emerged. Update strategies accordingly, integrating lessons learned into future preparation. This continuous refinement transforms contingency planning from a one-time task into a dynamic process of mental fortification, where experience informs strategy and adaptability strengthens over time. Scenario analysis enhances readiness. Consider multiple possible trajectories for a project or situation, including best case, worst case, and most likely outcomes. For each trajectory, define responses, allocate resources, and establish timelines. Scenario analysis prevents tunnel vision, ensuring the mind is prepared for deviation from expected paths. By systematically exploring possibilities, the brain develops both foresight and confidence, converting uncertainty into a structured field of actionable options rather than a source of anxiety. Decision-making frameworks complement contingency planning. When multiple outcomes are possible, having a pre-established method for evaluating choices ensures swift, rational action. Criteria such as impact, feasibility, alignment with long-term goals, and risk mitigation guide judgment under stress. By embedding structured evaluation into the contingency plan, decision-making becomes a disciplined, repeatable process rather than an emotional reaction, maintaining clarity and consistency even in complex or ambiguous scenarios. Habits of preparation reinforce resilience. Integrate contingency thinking into daily routines by periodically reviewing risks, updating plans, and practicing execution of backup strategies. These habitual practices strengthen neural pathways that support anticipation, adaptability, and problem-solving. Over time, the mind internalizes proactive preparation as a default approach, automatically scanning for vulnerabilities, evaluating options, and activating appropriate strategies without conscious effort. Habitual contingency planning transforms uncertainty from a threat into an arena for confident action. Perspective magnifies the benefits of preparation, viewing challenges as opportunities to exercise foresight, creativity, and adaptability shifts focus from stress to competence. Pressure becomes a tool for growth rather than a source of anxiety. Contingency planning, when paired with this perspective, reinforces the mind's ability to act decisively, communicate clearly, and leverage obstacles as catalysts for progress. Anticipation transforms the unknown from a source of fear into a structured framework for confident engagement. Ultimately, preparing contingency plans before challenges arise is a discipline of foresight, strategy, and adaptability. It equips the mind to navigate uncertainty with clarity, decisiveness, and resilience. By systematically identifying vulnerabilities, prioritizing critical risks, rehearsing responses, integrating logistical readiness, fostering collaboration, and reviewing outcomes, the brain develops a reliable, repeatable approach to challenge. Contingency planning converts unpredictability into a controlled field of action, ensuring that the mind operates with confidence, precision, and composure. Through this practice, obstacles cease to be paralyzing. They become triggers for measured, effective, and intelligent responses that consistently produce desired outcomes. Number 9. Adopt winning identities through microactions. True transformation begins with identity, not behavior. The habits, achievements, and results people produce are reflections of who they believe themselves to be. Adopting a winning identity is the conscious act of defining the version of yourself that operates with confidence, resilience, and focus, then reinforcing it through micro-actions that compound over time. Micro-actions are small, deliberate behaviors aligned with the person you intend to become. They are deceptively simple, yet their cumulative effect reshapes thought patterns, emotional responses, and ultimately outcomes. By consistently enacting these subtle steps, the mind internalizes success as natural, making high performance an identity rather than a temporary effort. The first step is clarity. Define the winning identity you wish to adopt with precision. This is not a vague aspiration. It is a detailed vision of the traits, habits, and mindset you wish to embody. Consider attributes such as discipline, adaptability, calm under pressure, decisiveness, and relentless curiosity. Writing these traits down crystallizes them in the conscious mind and provides a reference point for micro-actions. The act of definition is crucial. Without a clear identity, behaviors remain inconsistent, and motivation is reactive rather than proactive. Micro-actions serve as proof to the brain that you are already the person you aim to become. Each small behavior signals to the nervous system that this identity is authentic and operative. For example, if the winning identity involves discipline, completing a short task immediately upon recognition without procrastination reinforces self-perception as someone who acts promptly. Over time, these repeated, consistent micro-actions establish automatic behavioral patterns, shifting identity from aspiration to reality. The brain begins to recognize competence as a habitual state rather than a conditional achievement. Consistency in micro-actions is paramount. Isolated behaviors have limited impact. What produces lasting transformation is repetition over time. Identify daily or weekly actions that align directly with the identity you want to inhabit, then commit to executing them without exception. Small efforts responding to emails promptly, maintaining a morning routine, practicing active listening, or reviewing priorities at day's end serve as incremental building blocks. Each completed action reinforces neural pathways associated with the winning identity, gradually establishing a default state of high performance. Awareness is critical when implementing micro-actions. Pay attention to moments when habitual reactions diverge from the winning identity. These are opportunities for immediate correction and reinforcement. For example, when frustration arises, intentionally respond with patience and composure. When faced with procrastination, act decisively instead of hesitating. Conscious awareness of these moments, paired with deliberate action, accelerates the internalization of the identity and strengthens the mind's capacity to default to productive, empowered response. Language shapes identity in profound ways. The words you use internally and externally must reflect the person you intend to become. Replace limiting or uncertain statements with declarative, identity-affirming language. Instead of thinking, "I'll try to be more disciplined," adopt, "I act with discipline and focus." The mind interprets statements as self-referential truths, and repeated affirmation through language reinforces neural and behavioral alignment with the winning identity. Words serve as both compass and anchor, guiding thought and action toward desired outcomes. Visualization enhances the adoption of a winning identity. Mentally rehearsing scenarios as the person you aspire to be bridges the gap between current behavior and future potential. See yourself responding with calm under pressure, executing tasks efficiently, and engaging confidently in interactions. Sensory immersion in these mental simulations, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, reinforces the neural pathways required for real-world enactment. When challenges arise, the brain draws upon these rehearsed patterns, allowing behavior to reflect the identity without hesitation or doubt. Micro-actions are most powerful when tied to immediate context. Identify triggers within your environment that can prompt deliberate behaviors. For instance, arriving at a workspace might cue a review of priorities, a brief reflection, or an organized setup of materials. Social interactions can trigger active listening, constructive feedback, or confident communication. By connecting micro-actions to specific situations, habits form seamlessly, requiring less conscious effort while steadily reinforcing identity. The environment becomes a co-pilot in cultivating consistency and alignment. Reflection amplifies the impact of micro-actions. At the end of each day, evaluate which actions aligned with the desired identity and which did not. Assess both successes and deviations without judgment, then plan adjustments for the following day. Reflection ensures that micro-actions remain purposeful and prevents drift into habitual behaviors that contradict your winning identity. This iterative cycle of action, observation, and adjustment creates momentum, accelerating the internalization of traits and increasing confidence in embodying the desired self. Micro-actions also serve as resilience training. Every small choice to act in alignment with a winning identity strengthens the mind's capacity to resist distractions, negative emotions, and external pressures. For example, choosing to complete a difficult task despite discomfort, maintaining composure during confrontation, or adhering to a health routine reinforces self-efficacy. The accumulation of these choices builds mental toughness and solidifies identity, making excellence the natural response in varied circumstances. Integration across domains magnifies results. The winning identity should encompass multiple aspects of life: work, health, relationships, and personal growth. Micro-actions across these domains create a cohesive self-concept that generalizes rather than remaining compartmentalized. For instance, discipline in work tasks reinforces patience in relationships. Consistent physical training reinforces perseverance in learning. Cross-domain reinforcement accelerates identity formation and ensures that the individual operates holistically as the person they aspire to be. Feedback loops are critical to refinement. Engage mentors, peers, or coaches to observe, evaluate, and provide guidance on behaviors aligned with the desired identity. External insight identifies blind spots, validates progress, and introduces adjustments that enhance efficacy. Feedback accelerates learning, ensuring that micro-actions are not merely repetitive, but strategically aligned with growth and performance objectives. Over time, these external cues integrate with internal observation, creating a robust system for continuous self-improvement. Patience and persistence are essential. Identity formation through micro-actions is gradual, often invisible on a day-to-day basis. The compounding effect, however, is profound. Each deliberate action, however small, reinforces neural and behavioral pathways that align with the winning identity. Over months and years, these consistent choices transform the person's perception of self, making confidence, discipline, resilience, and focus automatic rather than aspirational. Small, repeated actions accumulate into monumental internal shifts. Ultimately, adopting a winning identity through micro-actions is a process of conscious construction and consistent reinforcement. By defining the traits you wish to embody, identifying daily behaviors that reflect those traits, and executing them consistently, the mind begins to operate as the version of yourself that commands results. Language, visualization, reflection, and environmental alignment amplify the process, while feedback and cross-domain integration ensure depth and coherence. Through disciplined micro-actions, identity becomes the driver of behavior, decisions, and outcomes, allowing success to emerge naturally, reliably, and sustainably. The individual who masters this approach lives as the person they aspire to be, and each micro-action becomes a brick in the foundation of lasting achievement and influence. Number 10. Evaluate outcomes logically. Adjust relentlessly. Success is rarely a straight path. Every decision, action, and strategy carries inherent uncertainty, and outcomes rarely align perfectly with expectations. The most powerful individuals are not those who avoid mistakes, but those who systematically evaluate results, extract insight, and adjust relentlessly. This process transforms experience into knowledge, failure into growth, and effort into measurable progress. Evaluating outcomes logically requires discipline, objectivity, and a commitment to truth over ego. Adjustment demands courage, persistence, and a willingness to refine strategy continuously. Together, these principles create a feedback loop that accelerates mastery, ensuring that each action compounds toward meaningful achievement. The first step is detachment. Outcomes must be assessed with clarity, devoid of emotional bias or self-judgment. Successes can mislead as easily as failures. Overconfidence blinds and frustration paralyzes. By approaching results with impartiality, the mind gains a realistic understanding of what worked, what failed, and why. Objective evaluation separates facts from narrative, allowing decisions to be informed by reality rather than perception. Developing this detachment requires mental discipline, consistent reflection, and a focus on learning rather than defending ego. Quantifying results is essential. Ambiguity undermines the ability to learn. Define measurable indicators for every action, project, or goal. This could be efficiency, accuracy, engagement, impact, or other relevant metrics. Concrete evaluation illuminates patterns that are invisible in anecdotal observation, highlighting strengths and exposing weaknesses. Numbers, data, and observable outcomes become the foundation for logical reasoning, ensuring that adjustments are rooted in evidence rather than conjecture. This analytical framework transforms evaluation into a systematic process, rather than a subjective impression. Contextual analysis deepens insight. Outcomes cannot be interpreted in isolation. The conditions under which actions were taken shape their effectiveness. Examine timing, environment, resources, and interactions that influenced results. Understanding the interplay of these factors reveals causal relationships, enabling more precise adjustments. By dissecting context alongside outcome, the mind identifies leverage points, recognizes constraints, and distinguishes between controllable and uncontrollable variables, allowing for targeted, efficient refinement of strategy. Pattern recognition is a core aspect of logical evaluation. Repeated behaviors, decisions, and responses produce trends over time. Identifying recurring outcomes, whether positive or negative, helps anticipate future consequences and inform strategic calibration. This skill requires both attentiveness and documentation. Maintaining records, journals, or performance logs allows for longitudinal insight. With accumulated data, the mind detects inefficiencies, amplifies successful behaviors, and reduces the likelihood of repeating unproductive actions. Patterns become predictive tools rather than mere reflections of the past. Adjustment must be proactive. Insights are only valuable when translated into deliberate change. Avoid passive hope or wishful thinking. Instead, define specific, actionable steps to improve outcomes. If a strategy underperformed, break it into components and determine which aspects require modification. Experimentation may be necessary to identify the most effective alternative. By acting decisively on insights, the mind converts reflection into tangible progress, ensuring that every evaluation cycle produces measurable improvement rather than stagnation. Feedback from external sources accelerates refinement. Self-assessment, while powerful, is inherently limited by perspective. Engaging mentors, peers, or trusted advisors provides fresh viewpoints, challenges assumptions, and uncovers blind spots. Constructive critique illuminates areas overlooked in personal evaluation and reinforces successful practices that might otherwise be undervalued. Integrating external input enhances the rigor of analysis and broadens the range of potential adjustments, creating a more robust cycle of learning and application. Iterative refinement is a principle borrowed from engineering and natural systems. Rarely does one evaluation produce a perfect adjustment. Continuous iteration, informed by each new outcome, strengthens performance over time. Treat every action as an experiment. Assess results, modify approach, implement changes, and observe effects. This relentless cycle ensures momentum, prevents stagnation, and embeds a mindset of perpetual improvement. Incremental adjustments, compounded over months and years, create transformative results far beyond initial expectations. Cognitive flexibility underpins effective adjustment. Rigid adherence to preconceived notions or prideful insistence on prior strategies inhibits growth. The mind must be willing to challenge assumptions, entertain alternative approaches, and pivot when evidence indicates a more effective path. Flexibility requires humility and openness to learning, but it also strengthens confidence. Knowing that decisions are continuously informed by reality reduces fear of error, allowing bold and decisive action without hesitation. Decision criteria must be explicit. Establishing clear principles for evaluating outcomes prevents subjective distortion and promotes consistency. Criteria might include alignment with long-term objectives, resource efficiency, scalability, and risk-reward balance. By applying these principles uniformly, the mind maintains clarity, avoids reactive or emotional judgments, and ensures that adjustments are targeted and purposeful. Consistency in evaluation cultivates reliability and accelerates skill development, producing progressively stronger performance over time. Documentation is critical for cumulative learning. Notes, logs, or journals provide a reference point for both current assessment and future planning. Writing observations reinforces understanding, organizes thought, and allows patterns to emerge across multiple evaluation cycles. By externalizing insights, the mind reduces cognitive load, prevents oversight, and strengthens the precision of adjustments. This tangible record ensures that learning is preserved and leveraged systematically rather than relying solely on memory or intuition. Resilience is fortified through this process. Evaluating outcomes logically and adjusting relentlessly cultivates a mindset in which setbacks are perceived not as failures, but as data. Each disappointment becomes an opportunity to refine strategy, sharpen skills, and expand competence. This perspective diminishes fear of error, increases willingness to take calculated risks, and strengthens persistence, producing a cycle in which challenges fuel growth rather than undermine confidence. Emotional regulation enhances clarity and evaluation. Outcomes often provoke strong reactions, pride, frustration, or defensiveness that cloud judgment. Developing habits to manage emotional responses, such as pausing before reflecting, taking breaks to regain composure, or separating self-worth from performance, ensures that analysis remains rational and productive. Emotional stability allows for precise insight and measured adjustment, transforming potentially disruptive feelings into tools for focus and clarity. Integration across domains amplifies efficacy. Apply the same principles of logical evaluation and relentless adjustment to professional, personal, and relational areas. Observing outcomes holistically highlights transferable patterns and accelerates mastery. Skills learned in one domain inform behavior in another, creating a unified system of continuous improvement. This cross-domain application magnifies the benefits of disciplined evaluation and ensures that growth is comprehensive, rather than isolated. Ultimately, evaluating outcomes logically and adjusting relentlessly is the cornerstone of mastery. It requires objectivity, measurement, contextual awareness, pattern recognition, and iterative refinement. By converting every action into data, every result into insight, and every insight into strategic adjustment, the mind transforms uncertainty into clarity, setbacks into learning, and effort into consistent achievement. This disciplined process ensures that progress is continuous, decisions are informed, and outcomes align increasingly with intent. The individual who internalizes this principle gains not only skill and effectiveness, but also the freedom to operate with confidence, knowing that every circumstance, success or failure contributes to relentless improvement and lasting mastery.